When it comes to criticism and feedback, the first reaction is often defensive. After all, no one likes to hear that they need to improve. But what if the true key to success was hidden in those uncomfortable moments? Most people see criticism as something negative, a barrier to be overcome. However, those who achieve great things know that feedback is a powerful tool for growth. Ignoring criticism is wasting golden opportunities to become a better version of yourself. Are you ready to discover how to turn criticism and feedback into stepping stones to success? Then, get ready to change the way you view these situations and learn to use each comment as a boost in your growth journey. To deal with criticism and feedback constructively, the first step is to understand the fundamental difference between these two concepts. Criticism is generally seen as a negative evaluation, often focusing on what is wrong or what needs to be corrected. It can be perceived as harsh and, in some cases, personal. On the other hand, feedback is a valuable tool for growth, a response given with the intention of helping someone improve in a particular area. It is an opportunity to learn and evolve, and when well understood, it can turn challenges into learning experiences. Knowing how to differentiate criticism from feedback is essential to avoid being shaken by harsh words and instead extract what can truly add value. When we receive criticism, the initial reaction may be defensive, as it is natural to feel attacked or unjustly treated. However, by changing your perspective and viewing these criticisms as feedback, it is possible to see the potential for growth they bring. A practical way to do this is by asking yourself, what can I learn from this? This simple mindset shift can turn destructive criticism into constructive feedback, allowing you to absorb useful information and discard what doesn't serve you. After all, criticisms and feedback can be disguised opportunities to improve skills, behaviors, or even ways of thinking. It is also important to consider the source of the criticism or feedback. Who is giving you this opinion? Is it someone you trust, a mentor, or just an unknown or uninformed person? The context and intent behind the words should be carefully evaluated. Feedback from a mentor, for example, probably comes with the intention of helping you grow, while criticism from a stranger may not be well-founded. By understanding this difference, you can better filter the information you receive, taking advantage of what truly contributes to your personal and professional development. This is essential for dealing with criticism more balanced and constructively. Now that we understand the importance of differentiating criticism from feedback, the next step is to learn how to turn this information into concrete actions for your development. But first, think, how have you been dealing with the criticisms you receive? One of the keys to dealing with criticism and feedback constructively is developing what we call a growth mindset. This mindset is based on the belief that skills and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. When you adopt this perspective, criticism and feedback are no longer threats and become valuable opportunities for growth and continuous improvement. Instead of avoiding criticism, you start seeking it, recognizing that it is a source of precious information that can help you become a better version of yourself. People with a growth mindset understand that success is not just a matter of innate talent, but of hard work and constant learning. When receiving criticism, instead of feeling discouraged, it is important to ask, how can I use this to grow? A practical example is when a writer receives feedback on a text. Instead of feeling offended, they can see the suggestions as a chance to improve their writing skills by experimenting with new techniques or approaches. With this mindset, each criticism becomes a step towards personal and professional development. Additionally, the growth mindset helps develop resilience, an essential quality for facing challenges and overcoming obstacles. When you understand that failure is part of the learning process, criticism becomes less painful and more constructive. Instead of seeing feedback as a final judgment, you see it as a starting point for future improvements. This not only increases your ability to deal with criticism, but also strengthens your confidence and determination. By cultivating this mindset, you open the doors to continuous learning and growth that goes far beyond what you could imagine. So, how can you start developing this growth mindset? The next step is to learn how to turn criticism into practical actions that drive your development. But before we move forward, reflect, how can you apply this growth mindset when dealing with criticism? Receiving criticism is only the first step. The real challenge is turning that criticism into actions that drive your growth. To do this, it is essential to take a practical and objective approach. When someone offers you criticism, especially if it comes in the form of constructive feedback, it is ideal to analyze the information in detail. Ask yourself, what exactly needs to be improved? And what specific steps can I take to make these improvements? This process of reflection helps turn words into a concrete action plan. For example, if you receive criticism about your communication at work, you can set specific goals for improvement, such as taking courses, practicing presentations, or seeking continuous feedback. In defensive, because it's natural to feel attacked or unfairly judged. However, by changing your perspective and viewing criticism as feedback, you can see the potential for growth that it brings. A practical way to do this is by asking yourself, what can I learn from this? This simple shift in mindset can turn destructive criticism into constructive feedback, allowing you to absorb the useful information and discard what doesn't serve you. After all, criticism and feedback can be disguised opportunities to improve skills, behaviors, or even ways of thinking. It's also important to consider the source of the criticism or feedback. Who is giving you this opinion? Is it someone you trust, a mentor, or just a stranger or someone uninformed? The context and intention behind the words should be carefully evaluated. Feedback from a mentor, for example, probably comes with the intention of helping you grow, while criticism from a stranger may lack foundation. By understanding this difference, you can better filter the information you receive, taking advantage of what truly contributes to your personal and professional development. This is essential for dealing with criticism in a more balanced and constructive way. Now that we understand the importance of distinguishing criticism from feedback, the next step is to learn how to turn this information into concrete actions for your development. But first, think, how have you been handling the criticism you receive? Another crucial point is follow-up. After implementing changes based on feedback, it's important to revisit the criticism and evaluate whether there has been progress. This can be done through self-assessment or by seeking new feedback from colleagues or mentors. This step is fundamental because it allows you to adjust the course as necessary, ensuring that the changes are effective and lasting. Remember, turning criticism into constructive actions is a continuous process. The more you engage, the easier it becomes, and soon you'll realize that criticism, when well utilized, is one of the most powerful tools for personal and professional growth. Are you ready to start acting on the criticism you receive? In the next step, we'll explore how to maintain a positive attitude in the face of criticism, even when it seems difficult to accept. But first, reflect. What can you do today to turn recent criticism into concrete action? Maintaining a positive attitude in the face of criticism is a skill that can be developed over time and with practice. The first thing to understand is that criticism is not necessarily a personal attack, but rather an opportunity to learn. By adopting a more open and receptive perspective, you can turn criticism into fuel for growth. This begins with how you choose to react to criticism. Instead of feeling offended or discouraged, try to see the constructive side of the situation. Ask yourself, how can this criticism help me improve? This simple exercise in reflection can completely change the way you view feedback. Another effective strategy is to practice gratitude for the criticism received. This may seem counterintuitive, but thanking someone for feedback, even if it's difficult to hear, helps reinforce a growth mindset. By expressing gratitude, you not only demonstrate maturity but also open the door to more transparent and productive communication. For example, when receiving criticism about your performance in a meeting, instead of reacting defensively, you could respond with something like, "Thank you for the feedback. I'll reflect on it and look for ways to improve." This attitude not only shows professionalism but also strengthens your image as someone who is willing to evolve. Maintaining a positive attitude in the face of criticism also involves taking care of your self-esteem and emotional well-being. It's natural that some criticism will be harder to accept, especially when it touches on sensitive areas. In such cases, it's important to separate the criticism from your personal worth. Remember that feedback is about behavior or performance in a specific situation, not an evaluation of who you are as a person. Cultivating self-care practices such as meditation, physical exercise, and leisure time can help keep your mind balanced and resilient, allowing you to deal with criticism more lightly and positively. How have you been reacting to criticism? In the next step, we'll explore the importance of seeking constant feedback for continuous growth. But before we move on, think, how can you change your attitude towards the criticism you receive? Seeking constant feedback is a fundamental practice for anyone who wants to grow and continuously develop, both in personal and professional life. Often, we become so absorbed in our routines that we forget to stop and evaluate how we are really doing. This is where feedback becomes an essential tool. By proactively seeking feedback, you demonstrate that you are committed to your own development and that you value the opinions of others. This not only strengthens your skills but also builds trust in relationships with colleagues, friends, and mentors. Moreover, constant feedback allows for quick and effective adjustments, preventing small problems from becoming major obstacles. For example, imagine a professional who regularly seeks feedback on their presentations. By identifying areas for improvement early on, they can make the necessary corrections before they become difficult habits to change. This is especially important in a dynamic work environment, where the ability to adapt and continuously improve can be the difference between success and failure. By receiving constant feedback, you're always one step ahead, ready to adjust your approach and achieve better results. Finally, regularly seeking feedback also helps develop a clearer and more realistic view of yourself. Often, we can't see our own flaws or areas for improvement, and this is where an external perspective becomes valuable. Asking for feedback demonstrates humility and a willingness to grow, qualities that are essential for any successful leader or professional. And most importantly, constant feedback creates a culture of continuous learning and evolution, where you're always striving to be the best version of yourself. Incorporating this practice into your daily life could be the key to unlocking potential you didn't even know you had. So, have you made feedback a regular practice in your life? In the next step, we'll learn how to deal with non-constructive criticism and how to filter what really matters. But before moving forward, reflect. How often do you seek feedback, and how has it impacted your growth? Not all the criticism we receive is constructive, and knowing how to deal with it is an essential skill. Non-constructive criticism is often loaded with negativity, vague, or even ill-intentioned, and can affect you emotionally if not correctly filtered. The first step in dealing with this type of criticism is to develop your own critical sense and discern whether the opinion really has merit. Ask yourself, does this criticism have any value for my growth, or is it just an opinion I can ignore? By adopting this approach, you protect yourself from absorbing criticism that isn't meant to help but rather to demotivate. Another effective strategy is not to react impulsively. When confronted with non-constructive criticism, it's natural to feel the need to defend yourself or even retaliate. However, responding calmly and thoughtfully is always the best choice. Take a deep breath, reflect, and if necessary, simply thank them for their opinion and move on. Often, non-constructive criticism says more about the person giving it than the one receiving it. Keeping your composure in such situations demonstrates maturity and confidence. A practical example would be when a coworker makes unfounded criticism about a project. Instead of reacting on the spot, it's better to reflect and, if necessary, seek constructive feedback from someone you trust. Finally, it's important to remember that you don't need to absorb every criticism you receive. Choose which criticisms deserve your attention and energy. Remember that others' opinions do not define who you are or your worth. If the criticism doesn't offer a real opportunity for growth, it might be healthier to set it aside and focus on what really matters. Cultivating this ability to filter criticism and stay focused on what adds value allows you to grow without being overwhelmed by unnecessary negativity. How have you been dealing with non-constructive criticism? In the next step, we'll explore how to give feedback effectively so that your criticism is always constructive and beneficial. But before we move on, reflect. Which criticisms have you been absorbing that you perhaps should leave behind? Giving constructive feedback is an essential skill, especially in professional and personal environments where clear and effective communication is crucial. The secret to constructive feedback lies in how it is structured and delivered. First, it's important to be specific and direct. Instead of generalizing, point out specific behaviors or actions that need to be improved or adjusted. For example, when giving feedback on a presentation, instead of saying, "It was good, but it needs improvement," you could say, "Your presentation was clear, but it could be even more impactful if you used more practical examples to illustrate your points." This clarity helps the person understand exactly what needs to be adjusted. In addition to being specific, it's essential that feedback is balanced. This means that while pointing out areas for improvement, you should also highlight strengths. This approach, known as the feedback sandwich, helps soften the reception of feedback, making the person feel valued and motivated to improve. For example, when criticizing the execution of a project, you could say, "Your planning was excellent and the attention to detail made a difference, but it might be worth revisiting the deadlines to ensure everything is delivered on schedule." This creates a learning and growth environment where feedback is seen as a development opportunity rather than a destructive critique. Finally, how the feedback is delivered makes all the difference. It's essential to create a safe and respectful environment for this conversation. Choose an appropriate moment when the person is receptive and in a place where they feel comfortable. Avoid giving feedback in public or in moments of high tension, as this can create resistance and even negatively impact the relationship. Remember, the goal of feedback is to promote growth, and that only happens when communication is done with empathy and respect. When feedback is given constructively, it strengthens relationships and contributes to an environment of collaboration and trust. Do you already practice these techniques when giving feedback? In the next step, we'll explore how to create a culture of constant and constructive feedback in your relationships and workplace. But before we move on, reflect. How can you improve the way you give feedback to those around you? Creating a culture of constant and constructive feedback is one of the best ways to promote collective growth, whether in a work environment or personal relationships. A healthy feedback culture encourages everyone to give and receive opinions openly, with the common goal of continuous improvement. For this culture to thrive, it's essential that feedback is a regular practice, not something that only happens in moments of crisis or formal evaluations. By integrating feedback into daily life, it becomes a natural communication tool where everyone feels comfortable sharing their perspectives honestly and constructively. One of the first steps to creating this culture is setting clear expectations about how feedback should be given and received. This includes establishing that feedback should always be respectful, specific, and growth-oriented. By promoting this type of communication, all members of the group or team know that their opinions will be taken seriously and that the goal is mutual development. For example, in a work team, you could institute a weekly project review practice where everyone is encouraged to share their opinions on what worked well and what can be improved. This regularity makes feedback an integral part of the work process. Another important aspect is the role of leadership in promoting this culture. Leaders who lead by example, accepting feedback with humility and offering constructive criticism in a balanced manner, set a standard that others will follow. Additionally, it's crucial that leaders recognize and celebrate the efforts of those who use feedback to improve. This not only reinforces the importance of feedback, but also motivates everyone to continue seeking ways to grow and evolve. A well-established feedback culture creates an environment of trust, collaboration, and constant learning, where everyone feels valued and engaged. Now that you understand how to create a culture of constructive feedback, it's time to reflect. How can you start implementing these practices in your life or work environment? Think about the opportunities you have to give and receive feedback regularly. And with that, we conclude this journey on how to deal with criticism and feedback constructively. But before we wrap up, reflect. What can you do to turn feedback into a driving force for your growth and that of those around you? After understanding how to deal with criticism and feedback constructively, it's clear that these moments, as challenging as they may seem, are valuable opportunities for growth. So, what will you do with the criticism you've received recently? Is it time to turn that comment that bothered you so much into a catalyst for your development? Remember, success doesn't come from avoiding feedback, but from embracing it and using it to your advantage. Don't let ill-intentioned criticism bring you down. Instead, filter out what really matters and turn it into actions that propel your journey. And of course, to keep learning how to improve every aspect of your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, we'll explore more ways to grow and evolve.